Hey folks, this is Buddy Holmes, Waterfall Forge. Today we're going to do forming some leaves, and we're also going to get into forming a magnolia flower. We have a project that we have to get out pretty quick, so we're going to go ahead and incorporate that with it. And we're also going to do a much larger leaf form a little bit later on in the video today. So let's go ahead and get started. We make a lot of these magnolias. This is the pattern that we got cut out for it. And this particular one, this is the center for it we did earlier. And we're going to put these together later on, but we're going to form this one kind of the same way as we did this one. And our particular one here that we're using is going to be incorporated in a little fountain that we're doing that needs to get out pretty quick. So we're going to kind of go along with this. But first we need to do it, we need to punch a little hole in the middle of it. Now there's a couple ways to do that. I mean, you could drill it out if you wanted to. You have to carefully drill it out. But we have one of these little Whitney type punches right here. And this is what we use most of the time for just punching these holes that we use all the time. And just push on it, and it pops it right through, and you got a nice, neat little hole. You don't have to worry about it catching or anything like that with your drill. Okay, this is the little magnolia piece we just popped the hole in, and I'm going to anneal it. And we talked about annealing in the earlier tape. So we're going to do this, and generally this isn't that big. We can usually do this with a torch, which is what I did last time. But I wanted to show you this table. Now this is one of two tables we have. This one has 4 foot wide refractory tiles, which I got from a refractory supply that I have locally. And you can also use fire bricks, which you can get from pottery supplies and refractory companies and so forth, because you want to have something that you can heat up other than a steel table, even though you can do it on a steel table. But the steel table acts as a heat sink, and you want to kind of avoid that, and this doesn't. So we're going to anneal this real fast, and rather than using a torch, I'm going to use a weed burner, because what we'll usually do is we'll fill this whole table out with stuff that we need annealed, and then we'll go ahead and just anneal it. So hang in there. This will be a little bit loud for a second. Now once it's gotten all black and lost all of its shine and got a little bit of a red on it, I know that I've got it soft enough for what I'm doing for this, because this particular thing doesn't have to be all that soft. But what we're going to do now is we're going to take it over and we're going to quench it, and the purpose for quenching it just so I can handle it from here on out. The quenching will keep it nice and soft, but if you air cooled it, it would be the exact same thing. It's just that quenching it makes everything go a lot faster. Okay. Okay, now it's cool enough for me to deal with. I'm going to bring it over and we're going to shape it on a little form that we've got. Okay, folks, what we're going to do here is this is a little cast iron radius type sinking piece that you can use. Now, if you don't have anything like this, you can get these from eBay, by the way, or any blacksmith group will have some probably for sale. But you can also just go ahead and get you a piece of good solid wood or MDF and shape it into the kind of contour that you need out of MDF or plywood with just a 4-inch or 4.5-inch side grinder with a flap disc on it. Do the same thing. But let me go ahead and put my ear protection on here. Now this mallet right here is just one of many different sizes, just happens to be good for this. And all I'm going to do is just lightly tap it around. I'm not trying to get the final shape, I'm just getting a general shape on it. And then I'm going to go back and go ahead and hit it a little harder so I can work harden it, because when we annealed it, it lost all its strength. So we're going to work harden it, just go back and forth with it. Rotate it around. Work all the way to the center, because you don't want the center to be soft. You want everything to be kind of a nice contour. And just kind of work your way all the way around. This won't take very long. We make a good many of these. This is actually one of the smaller magnolias that we make. When we do big magnolia trees, some of them will be like 6.5, 7 feet tall, sometimes longer, with hundreds of leaves. And then the magnolia blossoms will be different sizes. We'll have a small one like this, and we'll also have much larger ones as well. Okay, that's all there is to that. Okay, now you don't want to leave it just like this, so what we do is we pull these out. Gets a little bit nicer shape to it. And then what we'll do is we have these pliers. These were made so that you can crease. And there's any number of types of these you can get. Just again, look online, or if you're pretty good with a TIG, these aren't that difficult to make. But what this will do is it'll put a little bit of a crease at the end of this flower right here, and it just adds visual interest to it. That's all. It's just a little extra something that you can do just to make it a little bit more interesting to the eye. That's it. Okay, this is a piece we just hammered, and this is a piece we had earlier, and now what we're going to do is we're going to assemble them like this. And we got these holes in the middle that we punched earlier that I showed you, and we're going to run a piece of tubing through that, just barely through it, and then we're going to put kind of like a little, some little cut pieces of copper right in the center part to act as kind of the stamen of the flower. And then this will be almost pretty much done, and we'll just go ahead and add it to the little tree trunk that we're making a little bit later on when the fountain gets a little bit further along. Okay guys, look, this is where we're at. We've got the magnolia blossom started, and this piece of course will go into here, and we're going to connect it together in just a minute. Now this is part of my actual flowing fountain, so it'll be connected a little differently than you would if you were just making one, you know, for decorative purposes. Then you could use a copper rivet, or you can just braze it together. But what we're going to do is, once this thing is together, it's going to look kind of bad without a center, you know, the stamen and everything with it. So what we do is we make a little strip like this with all the little tines cut. And there's a couple ways to do it. Now we do it, because we do a lot of these, we do it with on the bandsaw. But you can do it just as well with just your regular shears like this. Now the only catch is that when you cut them with shears, they have a tendency to want to curl up like that. And so before you go too far, you want to go ahead and uncurl the ones that started curling, and then go ahead and cut some more. And then once you get to the end, you can get your little rubber hammer or something and kind of smash them flat. And you're going to need to anneal them anyway. So when you anneal this, smash it flat again after it's cool, and then you can roll it up, which is what we're going to do here in just a second. But I wanted to show you this. Now our magnolia leaves that are going to go along with this little small little tree that we're making this is a pattern for them, and we've cut some out already, and we're going to hammer these so you can see how everything's going to kind of fit together. We're going to do that in just a second. All right, now we've got this little piece annealed, and then what we do with it at that point is this is just a piece of 3/8, but it depends on what size you need, and we're just going to roll it around it. And this is going to make a nice, easy little stamen setup for that magnolia. Have a nice center on it. Now once I get this thing all pulled around and kind of squished in tight, what I usually do is before I start assembling, I'll pull these out so they're a little bit easier to get to since everything's cold right now, and get all these pulled back. And once I get it on the flower, I'm going to come back and I'm going to burn the tips of these so they don't look as nice and neat and manufactured looking. They'll be burnt, and I'll show you how we do that in just a second. I've got a little pipe already cut, and cut at almost a 45, not quite a 45, because we have a little top of the tree it has to slip into, and we want this flower to be at a certain angle. So we're going to slip that on top, and I'm going to go ahead and braze that in place. And then once that's brazed in place, we're going to slip that center section on, and then we'll go ahead and drop that little stamen setup that we just made on top of that, and then we'll be then we should be good to go. Now let me grab another piece of solder here. Now this is I've got this turned down a little bit, and it's a smaller tip because I was doing some things earlier that I needed that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of tip this up a little bit because it's tend to flop around a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit of solder on it right there, get it kind of straight, heat it up so I can move it well, get it kind of nice and even. Put a little bit of extra solder. Whoops, too much. All right, that's pretty straight. Now we're going to put our other piece, our centerpiece on. Kind of get it kind of even best we can, and then we're going to go ahead and solder it up, and then I'll show you how the stamen thing works. Now these magnolias, you can make them with the magnolia leaf behind them, and it makes for a really good wall hanging. And if you want to get really adventurous with this, you can make 2 or 3 of these blossoms and string them together on about a 3-foot copper pipe and put a lot of magnolia leaves on it and make an overhang thing for your door, your front door, and they look really nice. All right, now I'm putting my little centerpiece in here now, and all I did was just drop it on top. I'm heating it up. Now, it takes longer to heat it up now because we have multiple layers of copper here, and they're acting as heat sinks. But I'm able to get this around here pretty good. And it doesn't have to be sealed or anything, but you want it to look neat. So you put enough on there. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit. And then I'm going to burn the tips on all of these. So they just look a little bit more natural than just being just cut off straight like that. Now what we're going to have here is a magnolia blossom, but it's going to be kind of a dark, ugly magnolia blossom there for a little bit. And then what we're going to do here when the camera goes off is we're going to go drop this into our bucket of sodium bisulfate, which is just pH minus. You can get it at the pool store. I've talked to y'all about that before. And we'll see you in just a second. Now we've got the magnolia blossom and the acid cleaning up, and what it's going to be set up right here. And then we have all our magnolia leaves on all these branches across here. And then later on we'll have irises and other things in here to dress all this up. And of course we got the bird on the top. So this is what everything's going to fit on in just a second. So let's go over now and take a look at magnolia leaves. Okay. Look, this is one of the magnolia leaves that we cut out a little bit earlier. And all I'm going to do now is put a vein down it and then the little side veins. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how we put a little bit of extra shape into it. With a visit from my dog here. That's Herc. So I'm running a vein down the center now. Now there's several ways you could do this, but if I do it this way I can get a little bit of a shape to this rather than a straight line. We can do them on a break, but you get a straight line, and I kind of like the idea of it having a little bit of a curve rather than just being totally straight. And then what we want to do is we just want to come back. And this is that neoprene pad that we talked about in an earlier video, and it really helps make much more depth to these lines and gives them a lot more character than if you did it on a piece of wood, even though that'll work. But try to think of some kind of little thin pad you can use when you're doing this if you don't have the neoprene available. And you might even think about the little liners that you can buy for your tool chest. Those will work in a pinch until you can get hold of some. Now look, you see what we've got here? We got a little bit of a curve to this because of how hard I hit this and how it went into the neoprene. And this is actually a pretty good thing. We want to have a nice little curve to it. But what we've got now, this right here, even though it's got a little bit of a curl because of how I hit this, each one of these veins, it's got a little bit of a curl. I'd rather have that accentuated a little bit. So what we can do with that is we can take a round hammer. Remember that one? My assistant Colin is working the camera today, so he's handing me tools too. It makes it a lot easier. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of go back, and this has 2 round edges, but a little ball peen or several different kind of ball peens would do the same thing. You don't have to have this. And I'm just going to tap in between the lines. I'm not going to try to hit the lines. I don't want to do that because I'll be defeating my purpose. And I'm just doing this real lightly. It's not taking much to do it. And I'm getting a little bit more definition in between the lines now. It kind of rounds everything off. And I'll try to show you that better in just a second. Now, by the way, I showed you the little tree over there a second ago. We're going to need about 25 or 30 of these to be able to do that tree the way it needs to be done. Now, it's difficult to see because these aren't clean, but there is a nice little hump now in between these lines. And while it might not show up on the camera well, it will show up to somebody looking at this later on. Now, you see we have kind of an inside curve right here. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. And you can leave this one like this, and later what we're going to do is we're going to come back and put stems on these. And this may not be in this video, but that's what we'll do. Put the little bronze stems on them. But we don't want them all the same shape. And if you keep doing it this way, they'll all be the same shape. So I'm going to bring you over to a tool that we use to put a different contour in these. And it's a very simple little thing I made years ago. And this is a piece of bronze, but it doesn't have to be bronze. You can make this out of mild steel. Just get your piece of mild steel flat bar and cut it. And it's maybe difficult to see. So Colin, see if you can get over here and notice that this part of the contour right here is a little bit sharper. It's a little bit more of a curve than this side is. And what that does is give you the flexibility of being able to make a big curve if you want it, or a slighter curve on this side over here. Now for your blacksmith buddies, you can get this made out of mild steel like I said, and this actually can be used to shape when they're doing leaves and things that are hot iron. And it works just as well for that as it does for this. Of course, you just have to hang on to things with tongs. Now what we're going to do now is use that and take this leaf, which now has a curve kind of in this direction, and we're going to make the curve go in the other direction. And that's just for variety. It's not like it has to be done. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this right here on top, and it kind of rides, that vein does, on top of this. So you don't want these too thick because you want to be able to catch that. And then what we're going to do is take this old rawhide hammer, which I've had for like ever. I think it's older than Colin actually to be, And we're going to tap this down, and we're just going to tap it down onto that little piece of bronze. And you can flip it over and do it the other direction, so it's more convenient for you to hold. And by the time you're done with it, what you've got is you've got a nice curve going in the opposite direction. And so when you're making leaves and you're going to put them on a tree or a decoration or whatever you're going to do, you don't want all one shape. So you use this to have one of them go this way, have the other one go the other direction, and it just looks much nicer all the way around. And by doing it this way, it didn't really affect any of that hump that we put in earlier. All right, now we're going to head on over and do some other things on the other side of the shop. Turns out the video was running a little bit long, but I wanted to put this in. This is the magnolia that we were working on in the video. And we're kind of in a hurry because we have to have this for a charity event on Sunday, and it's Thursday afternoon right now. So we finished the fountain up, but this is the magnolia, and this is all the magnolia leaves that we were talking about, and then I showed you how we did. And we just put them all together into like a little small magnolia, I guess bush almost. It's not quite a tree, but I wanted y'all to have a look at this. And I'll put a full video of the entire fountain running, but this video is running a bit long now, so we'll do that a little bit later in another video. Thanks.